Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. We are still rolling along here. Had a good sort of recap episode a couple weeks ago. Last week, I actually got to talk to a maple farm producer, a maple syrup producer, and we learned about some stuff I didn't know about it. I've been partaking in Maine Maple Sunday events for a long time, and learned some things I hadn't learned before, believe it or not. So, and this week brought back a recurring guest, someone I always enjoy talking with, whether it's on the podcast or not, and someone that I know you all enjoy listening in and learning from as well. Chris Krause from MedCOR Professionals is here with me. Chris, thanks so much for coming on and having this chat with me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I was psyched to get your message. I'm coming back into frame here.
Yeah.
Somebody decided to join us. This is
Oh,
Toodles the cat.
Hi,
and
Toodles.
She's up here. She likes to come and hang with me when I'm in my office. And just at this moment, she decided she needs my attention. So no, she got a little bit of that. Hopefully she'll go tend to herself.
Right. Well, that's important. They won't give up if you don't give it to them. So
right. Yeah. She's a cool cat.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, thanks, awesome, dude, for having me. It's great to be able to talk to you again. I love doing these. So
of course,
let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So we were chatting a little bit leading up to the podcast here, and something that actually both of us have been talking about a little bit. I've been doing some mindset type posts for people, because really more less for marketing purposes and more for just sharing some things that have helped me and to remind myself of these things. So yeah. I talk a lot about this podcast sometimes being a little selfish for me, Chris, because I like learning some of the information, but also love sharing it with other people. And some of those posts I've been doing kind of fall in that category a little bit, I think. But we were chatting a little bit about our mindset, our frame of mind, and being closed versus open-minded when it comes to our health, and how past experiences shape, whether it's with the same type of provider, with a different type of, injury, diagnosis, dysfunction, whatever the case might be, or seeing different providers for the same thing, and not letting some of those past experiences maybe cloud some of the good that might come out of this journey that we're on. So right. without picking the topic apart too much, this was something that you had kind of proposed and wanted to chat about. What types of things in this have you seen on both the positive and negative side? Let's get into it a little bit.
For starters, what comes to mind is, the rehab world across the board, whether you're a patient, a therapist, a doctor, a nurse that's in the mix, anybody on the care team, and certainly the business entities that, are in the business of making money by running rehab businesses and hospitals and stuff like that. Everything is really predicated on outcomes, and outcomes come in a lot of different forms for a lot of different reasons. But by and large, in the 30 years just about I've been doing this, it seems to me that the patient outcome, the thing we're all most keenly focused on, and this is our best and most important goal, is to help this person get better. The ones that have the best outcomes, seemingly without fail, there's probably research about this, are the ones that approach it with at least some degree of positive mindset and the willingness to put in some work. There's some ownership in making whatever it is better.
Yeah.
It's understandable in many cases that people don't come to the table with that. When you break a bone, have a heart attack, or need rehab, those aren't fun things. That's very natural to go at that with a very negative attitude, feel like a victim, and that's fair. But the reality is when you can face it head on in some capacity with lots of support, the outcomes are going to be different. And what got me thinking about this was the fact that my 17-year-old son, Porter, is just now 2 days post-op from his 4th knee surgery.
Mm.
And his mindset through the whole thing has been really impressive and really remarkable. And this I'm judging against my entire career of patients who I've seen react in different ways to different things.
Yeah.
So that's what got me thinking about all this, and why I think it's a cool thing to talk about, to get people to think about that, is because we're all going to need help and health care and rehab in some form or another. So
Yeah.
how can we set ourselves up in the here and now, with, trying to maintain an open mind, and really recognizing the significance, the importance in the role that it plays in the outcomes.
Yeah.
It sounds cliche, but I feel like it's really important.
It is really important. And I think a lot of people would believe that something more, traumatic that kind of came out of the blue that you weren't expecting would actually have a more negative impact on your mindset and whatnot. But I actually believe it's people like Porter, well, not like Porter actually, but people who are experiencing things like Porter that actually have a harder time with this, where things are more chronic.
Yeah,
They
right.
feel like they've tried everything. They've
And that's
they,
fair.
they've
I
thrown,
get it. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah, they've thrown everything and the kitchen sink at it. And those people tend to have a harder time being a little bit more open-minded, maybe wanting to put as much effort in, because it's like, well, I've tried all these other things. Why is this going to be different? Or maybe I've even tried this thing before, and just because you're a different provider, why is this going to be different than the last time I tried
Oh, sure. Yeah.
this
Oh,
this
yeah, I
avenue?
had therapy. I went to, yeah, sprained my ankle and I went to PT for a while before, and I didn't really like the way they did it, and it didn't really get all that much better. So now I'm not going to go back to the therapist
Right.
for
Exactly.
my hip issue on my other leg. Yeah, that's,
Mm.
you know, that's, that's the kind of, I'm not even sure if it's resistance, but there's a closed-mindedness or such a quickness to rely on the past patterns and
Mm.
the historical context you have for things. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to put these words together. Um, and I think if I look at the population of people that I've had come through as part of my life as a therapist, the ones that come to the table, there's people that have a more intrinsically positive attitude or positive outlook on life.
Mm.
um, you don't get that response from those people.
Right.
They're not the ones that go, I tried it before and it didn't quite work. They're the ones that'll think it through and go, yeah, I tried it before, but this is a different issue, different guy, different time.
Right.
The outcome's likely to be different.
Right.
So it's thinking it through in those terms for me goes to, how do I help the folks that don't come to the table with that natural intrinsic open-mindedness?
Mm.
What are the things that I can help with, and how can I frame it? Is it contextual stories to show, to like examples of proof that other people can do it? This is where Jason would have been great for this conversation, because
Mm.
his grasp, Jason Gutman, his grasp of human nature and stuff like this is really strong.
For sure.
But
We'll have part
what
two.
are those right, what are those levers that we can adjust for ourselves to go, no, you know what, the recognition of, uh, I'm not going to stand behind this barrier.
Mm.
I'm not going to worry about it. I know it's a thing. I guess it sucks that it is the way it is, but I'm going to try it with a different guy. It's a
Mm.
different time. And there's an element of being able to talk oneself through it. But what
Yeah.
do you do when you find yourself stuck? I'm the same way. I'm certainly not
Mm.
highly skilled in this regard.
Sure.
I think about it and work on it, but what do you do to get yourself through that stuff? Heck,
Yeah.
look at what you had to go through to start your practice. This is not a thing that all PTs do, and a podcast for that matter.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's sometimes it's life puts you in that situation. You have no other choice. But I think for some, and I think the big take home in some of this is that sometimes it is just intrinsic. Like some people are going to be way better at this than others.
Oh yeah.
There are people out there that, you mentioned how some of my stuff got started. There are people out there that would have just been like, well, I guess I just have to go find a job, even if it's not in an area of my field that I enjoy working in.
Right.
Which was suggested to me by other people, you know,
Oh, really? Yeah.
including, mostly people that, come from a time and a generation that you just did whatever you had to do to provide type of thing. So,
Yeah, that's
which,
fair.
and again, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's a move. That's a viable move
I was,
for generations.
I was mentally prepared to do whatever I had to do, but I was like, hey, I got to explore this avenue, first. But
Right.
and luckily for me, with a little luck and some elbow grease, it worked. But
So there's that initial open-mindedness of I'm gonna give it a try.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's really the thing where you get down to when you're trying to help somebody over the hump
mm,
of the rehab's going to be painful or going back for another visit or
yeah,
doing another 10 reps.
yeah.
It's I'm going to try.
I'm gonna try.
I'm
Yeah,
going to throw myself at it.
and I think the other thing, not only is this easier intrinsically for some people than others, but that then falls on the person that person is in front of, like that patient. Let's frame it from a patient perspective. The provider that patient is in front of needs to be better at that. So I'm going to throw an
Yeah.
example. I'm going to throw in or better at helping people with that. So I'm going to throw an example here at you, Chris. I was on the phone this week with a friend of one of my current clients who is having a knee replacement on Monday or Tuesday, and wanted to talk to me because the surgeon told her that for a good 2 weeks or more, your PT is going to be agony. So this provider who does knee replacements all the time is framing the fact that the most important part of this person's recovery, which is regaining their functional motion and strength and ability to walk and just move around in day-to-day life, every time they undergo it for at least a 2-week period, it's going to be terrible. It's going to suck. And
Right.
I was like, I'm glad he didn't sugarcoat it for you, because for anyone to say there's not going to be some pain involved would be
Right.
absolutely lying to you. But at the same time, every little bit and piece of what you do in that first 2 weeks is not going to be agony. Because when we hear that word agony, where do our minds go? I mean, that's
That
an
creates fear
emotional.
and apprehension.
Yeah,
That seems like a clumsy approach to, at worst, a clumsy approach, or maybe at best, to, like you said, shooting straight. Your rehab's
yeah,
going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. We're not going to lie to you about it. But to paint the picture of agony, or even too dark of a pain picture, sets somebody up
mm,
for apprehension
yeah,
and fear, and that's definitely counterproductive to that
yeah.
process.
Especially when it's a process that person has to go through. So
Right.
if you frame that, so let's put that in a different example. If this person is going through something in healthcare where there's multiple options and none of them are something that they have to go through, and a provider is talking about option A, like, yeah, might help, might not. Option B, yeah, this is probably what I would do. Or option C, now that's going to hurt a lot. Like
Right.
when they're giving, when a provider is giving them multiple options, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to,
Right.
they're going to be immediately closed-minded to two options and pick one, whether that's truly the best for that person or not. It just depends on who's in front of them talking. So we as providers have to do a better job educating and framing these things in a way that is going to motivate these people, and
Right.
then be good enough at what we do to show them that it can work this time, or send them to the
Right.
place where they're going to get the best help possible. So it's a two-way street. Some of it is definitely intrinsic, but in order for us to have an effect on that intrinsic motivation and open-mindedness, we have to be better at not only talking to those people, but providing the level of care that they deserve.
Yeah. Yeah, and that whole dynamic, I think, is one of the more fun parts of what we do, is
Mm,
sorting through that puzzle. And what is it that because that's very motivating for me. How can I help this person think through this differently? What can I present in a
mm,
different way
yeah.
that makes them see how much potential they really have?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it plays out in a number of different forms. I think about it with, um, guys my age. I'm in my early 50s, and all my buds are in our early 50s to late 50s. And
Mm.
naturally, we have different levels of health, and we're getting older, and we're recognizing that. And when we get together as a group, there's, at least for my taste, a lot more aggressive leaning or racing to be old men and complaining about teenagers and gas prices and all this other stuff.
Get off my lawn.
Um, that's exactly what it is. It's like, I get it. I can't wait to say that too. But to then take that mindset and apply it to, yeah, I know my gut's pretty big. I don't feel like, I'm getting any, I'm not going to exercise it, but, and I get it. I 100% get it.
Yeah.
But so the challenge then is, what can I do to figure out how we can all like be healthier in that regard?
Yeah.
So that's the fun part of being a therapist. And you're right. It's a really good point, and something that I don't think, I wrote a piece a few years ago about this. I don't think we get enough training in the clinical world, the clinical care delivery world, on this type of stuff.
Yeah.
This is a huge part. Like, how many classes did you have on how to be a good coach?
Yeah, not many.
Like, because that's really what it is. That's what we're doing in a lot of different ways. It's a coaching.
100%.
You're a skilled leader of these things. You're setting up goals and a game plan. And there's an easy metaphor there.
Yeah.
So like, but I don't know about docs and nurses, how much classwork they get on that kind of stuff, but it seems like that would be a worthwhile portion of an academic endeavor. But I think the pushback there is going to be, they got so much crammed into that time frame.
Right.
We don't have time to teach you how to be better at helping people get better.
Right. That's you learn that on the job, and the people you screw up on have to suffer a little bit for it. Right. That's kind of and docs definitely don't get that, because having worked in some hospital settings and having a wife that's a nurse, when those docs hit a hospital floor for the first time as residents, not as residents, as interns, they don't know how to talk to humans because they've been looking at textbooks for the past,
that could happen.
for the past 3.5 years. And but you're exactly right. Some of it is, what is the most important for these people to learn to not hurt the person that's in front of them they're trying to take care of, be a safe practitioner. So some of that does come from on the job, but even just not being complacent in what we do. I'll give you another quick story here, Chris, that I heard from a colleague and classmate of mine who transitioned from an outpatient role not too long ago to a home health role. So treating people in their homes in a different level of care. These people are fresh out of the hospital and are still homebound, as just for the listeners
typically
out there.
Typically more frail.
Homebound. And he got all of this praise from not only the patient, but his colleagues and people in the department, because this patient was raving about him simply because he taught a proper, good form, good muscle activation sit to stand.
Right.
And when he told me the story, he goes, "What is wrong with our profession that not only the patient, but the people that I work with now are like applauding me for that kind of praise?" Like, that's a basic human function. And that's what we are, as physical therapists, are responsible for restoring. And these people are so complacent with the level of care they think they need to deliver. And the fact that, and we don't need to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm going to say it anyways, the way that system is set up, what they do and don't pay for, and how long you have to be with the patient in order to get paid and all this good stuff. People get so complacent in that they're not even teaching people how to properly and safely get out of a chair. It's mind-boggling. So to me, we have to be better so that we don't set these folks up for a narrow, closed-minded mindset when they head into either dealing with something that's come back up, or something that's been chronic, or even just a new issue that they're dealing with, and they have these preconceived notions. But some of it's on them for sure, but instant gratification is an issue too, but a lot of it has to be on us.
Well, you mentioned instant gratification. We all have to be comfortable with this really cold, hard reality, and that no matter what, it's work. There's effort and intentional effort and work. Some of it is likely to be strenuous. It might be painful. It might be tedious. It might be boring.
Sure.
It might be anything other than what it is you're really in the mood to do at the moment. Whether it's, doing homework or rehab or studying for work or, any of that stuff, you got to put in effort. It takes
Yeah.
effort across the board, no matter what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So once everybody gets into that framework, and if we can just not be fearful of the effort, like with the case that you gave as an example, being fearful of going into the rehab is going to make me pull back from the amount of effort.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
understanding that it's a challenge, okay, helping people get to that point, excuse me, creating a real path. That's the next part of what we're, taught to do as caregivers is we know where we are. We got a pretty good idea of where we want to go and where we actually think we can get to.
Yeah.
What are the steps that we got to take to get from here to there? And that's where the goal setting comes in. And then the incremental activities that build up to create the goal, like the sit to stand. There's probably different activities that he did to strengthen and talk them through, the how there's the education piece of it.
Right.
Those things diminish the fear.
Right.
But to be good at that, it takes time and thought process. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? What are the goals? What's the priority? That stuff. Those are the things that we should be doing well by default as therapists, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and then on the person who's receiving the care, the patient side, then it's that now now you're up. Here's your plan. Here's
Right.
your activity. You came to us as experts, or you were, referred here. You're either spending time, money, and certainly effort, like I mentioned. What are you bringing to the table?
Right.
So that's when it really becomes I'll say the word fun because we're a couple of rehab geeks here. Fun for me as a therapist, fun for you as a therapist. It can even be fun for patients who see themselves improve beyond their expectations, quite literally in real time sometimes. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I did these movements a few times and now when I move, it doesn't hurt as much. You're
Yeah.
great at doing that. That's one of your things as far as really teaching different movement patterns and how to relearn what is a non-painful way of moving and addressing the things that keep the pain from coming back.
Mm.
But that's your patient then doing, that's where, we give somebody home exercises. If you're in an outpatient clinic, you and I have both worked in that environment.
Yeah.
I can, depending on what's going on with somebody, but let's say it's a gait pattern. You can pretty much tell as they come across the parking lot, walking into the building for their next appointment, whether or not they did their home exercises or not, or certainly as soon as you start working on the range of motion or the strength and the ones that do, and here's the motivating thing for me, the ones that do, they get better almost all the time.
Yeah.
Like the
Yep.
ones that throw themselves at it and go, what do you want me to do? Okay, I'm on it, coach. And they go and do it. Those folks, regardless of the prognosis, those folks always show some level of improvement.
Yeah.
That's where it really becomes fun.
Yeah, 100%. And to our point on mindset having a huge impact on these outcomes in healthcare, some of those folks you actually have to rein in a little bit, because they overdo it. They want more. They want to do, they're cranking into a stretch too far. And actually, geez, I got a little more pain. It's like, well, show me what you're doing. And they're cranking on their neck like this as far as they can. You're like, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't need, more is not better here. So,
right.
But even that mindset, like doing too much or wanting to do too much too soon, has to be curbed through good communication, good education, good inspiration on, okay, here's where we are, here's the goal, and here's the best way I think to get there, and here's your role in that. And that encouragement and coaching along the way. So on both ends of the spectrum, and that's just a great example as to how mindset in general on both ends of that spectrum are gonna impact those outcomes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating part of human nature, on both sides of it, from a caregiver, from a care receiver.
Yeah.
But it applies to pretty much everything that we do.
Yep.
Like we were talking earlier before the podcast about this new mobility safety product that I'm like ultra enamored with right now.
Yeah.
Um, this it is what I'm talking about is a company called StrideTech Medical, and they've got a product called StrideTech Go.
Mm.
StrideTech Go is a walker safety device that attaches to any existing mobility walker device, a standard walker, a front-wheeled walker, a rollator, etc.
Mhm.
A device that a person would hold and move in front of them for stability. The issue, as you and I know, with something like that is people using them safely, having them sized right, and then being compliant with it. Well,
Yeah.
this is like the safety device we have in our cars that detect when we're going to change lanes. It detects if there's too much pressure on the handles, too
Mm.
little, if I'm too close to it or too far away, and some other really cool features that really make an existing walker considerably safer, just like that.
Yeah.
And the founders of the company, this is where, like, because I met them, the younger people, I'm trying not to use the word kids, but they're in their 20s and I'm
Yeah.
50, so it's hard not to. But these really cool young people um, developed this product out of an idea for Tim, the founder, to help his grandmother who was having issues with her walker.
Yeah.
That's and then has really brought it full circle to the point where they're now going and they've opened it up to public funding. So
Wow.
anybody can go and invest in them, which is cool in and of itself. Um, but the barrier, like the audacity, I can't think of myself in my mind at 25 in college that I would have had the confidence and the nerve to do that.
Yeah.
And these kids did it. And talk about mindset.
Yeah.
Talk about perseverance, and it's a cool feel good story around this particular product. um and I'd love if folks hear this podcast that they go check it out. Just like I'm not officially involved with them, I'm definitely interested in them from
Mm.
my role as MedCOR perspective, because MedCOR sells mobility devices.
Right.
And this is, I think, an important innovation in our space. But it's just a cool story about a young guy with an idea and some friends that decided they weren't going to take any barriers and they were going to bring a product to life.
Yeah.
Um, that brings me back to how we started this conversation with how impressed I've been with Porter and his knee surgery.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love seeing that kind of stuff come out of young people. And it's
Mm.
why I think us, like guys like me, need to relax and not race towards being old men so quickly and pay attention to young, open-minded people.
Yeah. Yeah. There are things to learn from that. The first and foremost, what you're mentioning about how we deal with those barriers, and being okay with things getting derailed. I think when it comes to mindset, I probably talk about that with my clients more than anything, is how we navigate those situations where life, with something that we had no control over, brought us backwards just a little bit, but
Yeah.
navigating that from a physical and a mental and emotional standpoint, that's probably what I talk about most. So we can definitely learn from people like those folks over at that created StrideTech, and we'll definitely put a link for that if anyone's interested in checking it out in the show notes, because it sounds like a really interesting innovation. But yeah, we can learn from people like that, and that's the thing, is we need to be able to learn from both ends of that spectrum too, the good and the bad. We were talking a little earlier about, do whatever you got to do to get by. One thing I learned from that is it's an option if I needed it, but I learned from that that's not how I want to live, because all of a
Right.
sudden you blink and you've been doing something you hate for 20 years, and life around you is
Yeah.
probably not that great either, because your career sucks and you hate it.
Yeah.
So there's things to learn from both ends of that, from that spectrum, and that takes some open-mindedness on our end as well. So we need to be open-minded as providers and have a certain mindset and deliver at a certain level, and we need to, hopefully, the people that we're connected with, and I encourage everyone out there listening to be finding and actually searching out providers that you connect with on these different levels, because that's going to get you better sooner as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, if you're going to
So
a doctor or a therapist and personalities don't jive, there should be no harm in you finding somebody that you do connect with. That's
yeah,
going to make your outcome better. Everybody involved is going to appreciate it.
for sure. So yeah, we can learn on both ends of that spectrum. We should be out there searching for and looking for people that drive us. We don't have to be best buddies. It doesn't have to be an exact
Yeah.
perfect fit, but you do have to find someone that helps motivate you and understands you, and that you have a mutual understanding and respect for each other, and that's going to drive that person forward as well. But yeah, it just it comes from both. It comes from intrinsic and extrinsic, and this mindset piece has to be looked at from a provider standpoint and a patient standpoint, or we're not doing any of it justice without looking at it from both of those angles, from a delivery of care standpoint and a active participant in care standpoint.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see the curtain moving behind me. The dogs come into view too.
The dogs,
She decided to show up and her tail was banging against that.
Want to hang out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I really do feel like I've settled in on this notion over the last couple of years, and maybe I'm late to the party, but I really think open-mindedness could be one of the most valuable, like I'll call it psychological traits that we could possess or bring to bear.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to be gained by staying open, staying curious, and putting in some effort, because that's where the outcomes really come from. Being closed off or disregarding even what could be challenging our alternatives or opportunities, just like maintaining the open mind part and doing so with intention, I think is one of the most important things people can get good at.
100%. 100%. And that's not just in healthcare, that's everywhere, I think.
That's across the board. Yeah.
That's across the board. Yeah. 100%.
I like, and I try, I'm not always good at it, but I try, and my kids probably get sick of hearing me say things like, we need to be aggressively open-minded here.
Yeah.
Like that's the way I look at it, is like really, really, if I'm feeling closed off to something, I'm getting good at going, why am I being resistant to that? Why am I not, like, there might be a very good reason, and I can go, okay, yeah, you're right. I didn't want to touch the hot stove. Okay. That's,
Right.
silly, obvious type of thing. But, that kind of thing, challenging your conventions and thought process. And then if you confirm it, you confirm it, but
Right.
at least you give yourself an opportunity to move in a different direction.
Right. No, it's huge.
There was,
can't be understated. Yeah.
there was a post I shared from a guy named Adam Grant on LinkedIn today, and he had this really cool graphic of, and the story was along these lines. This is probably what had me thinking about it when you and I started talking about what we talk about today. But it was sort of this graphic of a life journey, a line drawing essentially of, here's this point where you started, and it starts to move along, and then it starts to branch out, and there's always different opportunities and paths that we can take. And it can seem easy to get lost in that, but no matter where you are on that line, on those paths, you're somewhere on a dot. If you stop on that dot and draw another straight line, there's an infinite field of more infinite paths from that point forward,
Right.
regardless of how you got to where you are.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool, his name's Adam Grant. He does a bunch of, I think he's a psychologist or psychiatrist, some great TED Talks.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that post, and yeah, what really resonated with me is sometimes we reflect and say, well, I got here doing this, so this is the way it has to be. But
that's a great point.
But we didn't realize that there were this whole other web of possibilities that would yield different paths and maybe the same result, maybe different results. But back then, there were infinite possibilities there. This was just the one we did. So how might we have to pivot? How might we have to change, both, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever pivot we have to make to navigate what's in front of us. But there's a ton of opportunity in front of us too. So don't follow the exact same path you did and ignore signs that might point you in a different direction, or it could wind up with a very, very different result. That same path moving forward might have a very different result as the path that you just came from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. The getting stuck in the, well, we've done it this way.
Yeah.
Then good or bad. That's a notion that cuts both ways sometimes.
For sure. For sure. Well, Chris,
But like everything else, there's balance too. Like to go the other direction too far.
yeah,
That's the
that's the thing. We can learn from both ends of the spectrum.
that's why balance is hard.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much. And we're definitely going to have a part 2 of this mindset plus effort equals results podcast. Cause like I said, I think you're exactly right. Our buddy Jason Gutman would be fantastic to bring in and talk about some of this stuff. So we'll definitely have a part 2.
Yeah, he's great with the how, right? He'll get
Yeah.
us into like the real steps and how people can do it. Seeing a guy like Jason's a big start. But yeah, that'll be really cool. I'd be totally into talking about that again.
Yeah, we will definitely plan that part 2. So everybody listening, be on the lookout for that. Chris, thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hopping on and doing this. And thank you all out there for listening, watching, wherever you are taking this in. Please be a friend and tell a friend. Share this episode with someone who could benefit from hearing this. We're just trying to get this info out to as many people as possible and help as many people as possible improve their mental, emotional, and physical strength to fulfill their true purpose in life. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications on, get those auto downloads going so that you're always getting the new episodes that drop every Wednesday for the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. And until next time, go make it a great week. Thank you, everybody. Thanks again, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.